The spiritual path is the healing path. You can't separate the two. Healing of all kinds, emotional, physical, psychological, has been an integral part of my spiritual journey since the beginning. Early on, I practiced metaphysical healing, like they do in New Thought churches and in A Course in Miracles, although this was long before A Course in Miracles had been written. It just seemed to me to be the way to go. Spiritual insight had to have a healing effect on human life. It just seemed like a given. In fact, I had experienced it. My life changed dramatically after that fateful night on the bridge where I had my first major awakening. At that initial stage, many things in my life just fell away, in ways that would have to be called healings, even miraculous. Healing was, and still is, a significant part of those traditions I mentioned. It was the demonstration, the proof, the manifestation that these insights were in fact true. That was proven by the healing of all manner of ailments, physical, of course, but also financial, emotional, and relationships. After a while, though, I became disillusioned with it all. It was becoming all about the results. It was no longer about the transformation of character and perception that had been the shift that started me on this path. It was becoming more of a therapeutic than a transformative realization. For me, spirituality had been a dramatic shift in perception. It was a shift of mind, body, and soul. It was a total redefining of my view of what things really were, how all this worked, and what the nature of existence and the nature of reality were. But it had become more of an applied technique, like a skill you got good at. There are, to this day, professional practitioners of healing in the New Thought movement. I did that. I had people call me for healing of all kinds of things, but I became disillusioned with it for two main reasons. Number one, it didn't work all the time. Number two, the emphasis was always about getting to the results. After a while, I would say to people, well, what if there weren't any results? What if nothing in your life changed at all? Would you still be interested in truth? Needless to say, they were not a little perplexed by the question. Not all, by the way. There were a few that really got it and were genuinely looking beyond the mere benefits it could bring. But eventually, I just had to leave it all behind. The fact that it didn't work all the time, along with misplaced emphasis, was quite disheartening. And I knew there was more to it. There was a conflict between my own inner spiritual life and the external expectations that were being laid out, and I needed to reconcile these. So I put it all aside. It was then that I started looking into psychological and emotional healing. I was interested predominantly in experiential psychology like Gestalt, trauma release, abreactions, and things like that. Those all eventually morphed into much kinder and gentler modalities like EFT and inner reconciliation and mindfulness, and various kinds of trauma release that weren't as traumatic as the original trauma. I also checked out the now burgeoning world of self-help, and they too all had a primary focus on getting some kind of result. I couldn't find any kind of transcendent vision that was interested primarily in the true nature of being. I always knew, and that belief persisted, that there was a very deep connection, a very real connection between our emotional and spiritual state and our physical state that manifests as the world around us. Now, this connection, in one form, exploded into the mainstream with the movie The Secret, and suddenly everyone was raising their vibration in order to get what they wanted. It was closer, but it was still confined to this personal sense of a separate self and all of its wants and concerns. It was still primarily therapeutic, results-oriented, and for me, that meant not essentially spiritual. I eventually came around full circle. I knew that the outer was nothing other than the inner made manifest on the grossest level of consciousness. I also knew that if you take care of the inner, the outer would have to follow, eventually, like looking in a mirror with a time lag. But the fruit that followed couldn't be the priority. In fact, it couldn't enter into the process at all if the process was going to be effective. It was like the wake of a boat. You don't get into a boat in order to make a wake. You get into a boat to go somewhere. When you do, you will make a wake. You can't help it. It's what boats do. But that's not why you're there. It's just the natural consequence of moving forward towards your aspiration. I saw the shifts in the external experience that resulted like that. As long as the focus was on where the boat was going, then those consequences would occur. Now, obviously, if you're out there going somewhere and you're always turning around and staring at the wake, steering the boat based on the quality of the wake, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're probably even going to run into something. But since you know that a wake is going to happen, you can forget about it. Now, I don't want to demean the desire for results. Of course, we all want and need more well-being in our lives. We crave more opportunities for growth, deeper relationships, more success, and financial security. These are important. In fact, it is the lack of those that probably brought you into spiritual inquiry in the first place. But they're secondary. The depth of our spiritual vision is always reflected in our compassion for ourselves and all the other beings we share the planet with, human and otherwise. The real results are an increase of that loving compassion reflected in increased patience, tenderness, understanding, and presence. Now, the relationship between childhood trauma and adult physical and emotional illness is an accepted scientific fact. It's not the least bit controversial. It has not entered into the mainstream of medical treatment, but that's not because of a lack of substantiated evidence, but simply because of an ideological bias. If you want more of an education about that, just read the books of Gabor Mate. So let me very meticulously break down how spirituality and healing come together. The cause of illness is almost always emotional trauma. What trauma is a disconnection from your soul. It is a disconnection from who you really are. This leads to an inability to access your own beauty and love and happiness and creativity. This creates what we could call stuck energy. And these energy blocks are what disturb every aspect of our lives. They throw the whole system out of balance. We experience that imbalance as the presentation of symptoms: illness, disconnect, depression, pain, financial struggles, relationship struggles. So at the root of all healing is soul reconnection, or the realization and liberation of who you really are. Spirituality is the name for that realization and the name for the practice that anchors it into your body and into your everyday life. The realization of who you really are is always accompanied by an opening of the heart to greater self-acceptance and other acceptance. This does not happen all at once. and it almost always requires the guidance of a teacher to walk you through it. But this unfoldment is absolutely necessary. The relationship between our inner and our outer life needs to be one of like a mother and a child. It is a relationship of love. As these insights developed in me, I began to see that the transformation could only come about with deep spiritual experience, and that was what opened the door to this inner reconciling and inner harmonization. This inner reconciliation had to be fueled by compassion. It was only this kind of self-love that could create an inner environment so safe that all of the ugly, difficult, and painful material that had been laying there under the surface wreaking havoc could bubble up to the surface in order to be healed, for the express purpose of being healed, released, purged from the system, purified, so that you would stand as what you have always been, your true nature. Unresolved traumatic events from the past become stuck energy in your body. The most effective way to deal with them is not through drugs or any intrusive procedure. While those methods can be useful and even necessary at certain times, they only deal with the manifestation. They only concern themselves with the symptoms that have already presented. They don't touch the underlying cause. The real cause is clear to me. It was always some real experience that we all had that created a disconnection from our soul. That is, a disconnect from who you really are. The actual event became traumatizing due to a lack of love and the absence of safety. Recognizing this, the revelation of spiritual insight dives right into the heart of the healing. And this kind of healing does address the cause and transforms our lives, our hearts, and our bodies. Ultimately, we realize that body, mind, and spirit are not different domains. And they're not merely connected. They are, in fact, one continuous whole. They are three aspects of the same indescribable thing. The manifest world is not the reality. It is the appearance. It is no more the reality than the image in a mirror is the reality. It is only a reflection. That which is seen is made of that which is not seen. The visible world is merely how consciousness appears at one particular level of perception. But what's creating that appearance and driving it into manifestation is the underlying unseen force. And that force is you. That force is your true nature, which was obscured by our traumatic soul disconnect, but not vanquished. It's still there. Reconnecting with your soul, or your true nature, is how you get access to your spiritual power. And that's the power of healing and transformation, all rolled into one. So let's do a meditation together. See if we can anchor this into our bodies. Start by closing your eyes and consciously asking your body to just relax. Putting your attention into the body rather than into the mind. Take a couple of deep, slow breaths. And just decide for a moment that your attention is going to be completely drawn inward. And that for a short time here, the thoughts and ideas that go through the mind are simply allowed to pass through without engaging you. It's just a decision to be made. decision that this moment just spent being with your inner being is important enough that you are going to devote dedicated time to it. And do your best to simply not engage with the stories that are always recurring in our minds. There's nothing wrong with the story. There's nothing wrong with your mind. We don't need to get rid of either. We don't need to try to force them. We're just choosing for some time to not engage. And let our inner attention, our inner eye, just take in the landscape of feeling. Notice that you don't need any words or any concepts to just feel. To notice the energetic play that is your body. And if you notice some tension arising in the body, just take another breath and just ask the body to let go and relax. This simple act of relaxation and disconnecting from the mind is the remedy for all stress and all anxiety, which requires the thoughts in the mind in order to exist. Now take another deep breath and let the relaxation deepen. Let your attention turn more fully just towards the feelings of the body. The feelings don't need to be named. In fact, there are some feelings we have that are so subtle we don't have names for them. And notice the various kinds of sensations that are there. Your arm feels different than your leg. You notice some parts may be more constricted or tense. Others may be relaxed at the same time. Just allow that to be. Remember, we're not here with any agenda. We're just here to be present with ourselves for the express purpose of simply being with yourself. And just see if you can take in the most subtle of all experiences. And that is your own presence. Notice that it's more subtle than even the sensations of the body. It is very quiet, very still. It's motionless, silent. Now don't try to hold it like it's some object that you can know. Just feel the simple fact of your own being. Notice that you didn't create it. You're not maintaining it. There's nothing you need to do to be present. This is your essence. This is your soul. Everything in your life arises from here. This is also love. Now, whatever may come up in your mind, just allow it to be there. If your mind has been intruding this entire time together, just let it. Or some uncomfortable feeling, physical sensation, or emotional. Just say, okay, you can be here. And simply relax into your presence that you are not maintaining. That remains completely still and quiet. No matter what the sensation that is in your body, the emotions that are running through you, or the thoughts gathering and dissipating in your mind. They don't touch your essential being. They move through it. So let yourself just say yes to all of them. Rest in the presence, the undisturbed presence, the undisturbable presence. And now notice that this is eternally so. Even though our attention has been so absorbed in the experience of our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, our memories, all of our experiences, that it has always been just this play of images and thoughts and feelings being witnessed by this unmovable presence, which is your true nature. And so, even the idea of reconnecting to your soul is not quite accurate. You've never been disconnected. You only thought you were. Your true nature has been and always will be this unchanging presence. Now I'm going to just be quiet for a few moments and let you just be here with the music, which will gradually fade out. And when it has finished, just remember, this is who you really are. You always have been, you always will be. There you will find your rest and your freedom and your healing and your heart.